It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and the show is brought to you by pscoco.com. That's pscocoa.com, pscoco.com. VB Saad is an independent curator with the Cocoa Exchange, and it's a registered trademark of Mars Incorporated. The Cocoa Exchange is formerly known as Dove Chocolate Discoveries, well known for making fine chocolates. And they make the finest, silky smooth chocolate because the products start with the best cocoa beans, which are tested for quality and flavor by expert Mars technicians. Only the best technicians. TCE, the Cocoa Exchange, offers not just premium chocolates, but anything from sauces and spices to brownie mixes, cake mixes, coffee mixes, martini mixes. So if you wish to treat yourself or someone you love to a sweet and tasty gift, then the Cocoa Exchange is the brand for you. So you go to pscoco.com, and there's two buttons you can find on there, right? One is the Shop Now button. You can start buying chocolate right now. It'll come to you in one of those fancy boxes, those refrigerated boxes. You can reuse it when you go fishing, right? Catch some fish, some bait. You put your bait in there, a sandwich, maybe some beer, right? Maybe some martini mix, right? You put a little nice cold martini when you're out there fishing. Summertime, right? You stock up on your chocolate. Now you get a craving for chocolate in the middle of the night. Yeah, you got some chocolate there. The best chocolate, you don't have to go get a Snickers bar or, some over-the-counter chocolate. You get the best primo chocolate. pscoco.com. You can also go into the cocoa business. You can get into the chocolate business with VB Saad. You can be an independent chocolatier. You can be an independent curator, a chocolatier. If you get two friends, you can be three chocolatiers. Okay? I love that joke. The three chocolatiers. Anyway, get your chocolate. VB Saad, pscoco.com. And you can also get these sampler packs and throw these tasting parties and all the housewives cackling in the corner there with the tasting parties. Everybody's having fun. Fun. Okay. Public service announcement. Every day in this country, 50 kids wind up in the emergency room. They have to visit the emergency room because they fall out of shopping carts at the supermarket. They're left unattended. They're allowed to stand up. They're allowed to play in those carts. Please, if you're a parent, make a point of not allowing your child to get hurt in these shopping carts. And if you work in a supermarket, consider putting up a sign warning people. I think this is something we should write letters, have a letter writing campaign to every supermarket chain in the company, and put up a nice warning poster. Hey, 50 kids a day. We don't need that. It's like it's 50 yesterday, 50 today, 50 tomorrow. It's 150. You know what I mean? And we can prevent this. It's something so preventable. These kids falling out there hitting their head. God forbid what happens to some of these kids. That's the shopping cart PSA. Coming up after this is Pierce Redmond on most stations. Pierce Redmond is interviewing Abby Martin. And I just did an interview with Pierce Redmond where he interviewed me, and it's in his Patreon section. Pierce Redmond, Porkins Policy, and he interviewed me for about an hour and a half, I think it was. It might have been 2 hours. And we discussed quite a bit of things, mostly private investigation business. My little encounter with Dog the Bounty Hunter, which is kind of a funny story. He loves to talk to me about Bo Dietl, who was an old friend of mine, a famous private investigator, and now he's running for mayor in New York City. So we talked about that a bit. So it's exclusive content to Pierce Redmond alone in his Patreon segment. So if you enjoy listening to me ramble on and talk about things, and I think me and Pierce have a very good rapport. He has a show coming on right after mine. I enjoyed Pierce very much. As a matter of fact, I talked to Pierce off the air about things I privately, probably about more than any other host or someone in this kind of business. I've confided a lot of stuff in him, and then he's looked into it further. We have a lot of things in common. He has a huge Twitter following, and I guess since mentioning this thing, I suddenly got this huge Twitter following myself this week. I went and I looked the other day. I had like 125 notifications like overnight. So a whole bunch of people suddenly discovering the Opperman report on Twitter. Now, if you're one of the usual Spreaker, because we have a show too, our show is played on Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. Spreaker, no one's heard of it. But if you go and sign up on Spreaker, you can use your Facebook page to sign up there like in 10 seconds. You just log in with Facebook and you're in. And then you follow the show. You become a follower. It's free. Then you get an email anytime we're doing a show. We broadcast a show. Get an email. It's a good way to keep up and keep track of the show. There's also a chat room in there. And since I broadcast over Spreaker in the same console, my dashboard here, I can see what's going on in the chat room. Who's in there right now? Matt Winnicott. Good old Matt. Okay. Our Canadian friend. I overlook it, though. He's a Canadian. I overlook it. Matt's different from the rest of the Canadians. But you can also chat in there in that chat room. And then also, too, what I want to tell people is people who enjoy chatting in that chat room is that after the show's over and people listen to the show, and way more people listen to the show after it's over than listen to it live. You know, we've reached... in total plays on Spreaker, it's like 1 million plays, and it's right under 1 million downloads. It's almost like 2 million people, and we've only been using Spreaker for a couple of years. So quite a bit of activity on Spreaker. And people from international, too, a lot of international listeners from Spreaker. You'd be shocked. Because I see all the new followers, you know, and they're all from all over the world. It's just amazing. But if you chat in Spreaker, after the show's over and people weeks later and months later, people listening to those shows can leave comments in the chat room. And a lot of times they're trying to leave comments for people that were chatting a week before or a month before. So if you're an active chatter in that Spreaker, there's people trying to contact you. Okay? And they're trying to ask you questions and get links and stuff like that. And they want to share information with you. So if you're a frequent chatter in Spreaker, feel free to come back later on and check it like a week later or 2 weeks later, because I get a notification every time there's a new comment in there. Which brings up the fact that some people think that after the show's over, what they can do is they can go to Spreaker and start spamming up the Spreaker account saying, hey, come listen to my show. Hey, I got this show in Alaska. Come listen to my show. Okay, that's not allowed. Okay, you can't go to my Spreaker account and spam your own show on all my Spreaker shows. Okay, that's going to get you deleted, okay, and banned from Spreaker. You don't want that. So that's a little Spreaker controversy going on there. I want to thank Nico House. Nico House was supposed to come on tonight, and it's late over there, too, and he's working like a dog. He just changed his work schedule. So he won't be on live on Thursdays, on Friday before my show, the way he normally is. And we're working that out. I'm going to have a replay on there. I'm going to play a tape of his show, or we're going to find another night for him to get him on there. But we have not lost Nico House. And I want to thank him personally, too, because he wrote some very kind words about me on his Facebook page this week. He's been going through some stuff. You may or may not be aware that Nico House is the guy who is behind the lawsuit against the Democratic National Committee, against the DNC, where they're being sued for fraud. And that when we donated money to the Bernie Sanders campaign, they didn't give Bernie a fair shake. And that lawsuit is going great. We're going to win that lawsuit. And Nico is a paralegal over there. He put together the legal team. And if that's also, too, people are familiar with the case of Sean Lucas, who was the process server, who then was found dead later on. That's also involved in this lawsuit. As a matter of fact, I talked to a lifelong friend of Sean Lucas, and I exclusively, and had some exclusive behind-the-scene information about that case. So Nico was supposed to come on tonight, but we could not get the Skype connection to go through. So we had to abandon that. I played the show with Alan Warren, who's a great radio host himself. He has a show up in Seattle on Friday nights. I think right before mine, so I don't think it conflicts. So if you enjoy me, you're in Seattle, listen to Alan Warren. Nico House also had some drama this week because he's been in a feud with the Young Turks. And that guy Senk or Jenk or Skank, what's his name? Skank, over at the Young Turks. I never liked those characters of the Young Turks. I'll be totally honest with you. I was never impressed with them one little bit. And now they're attacking Tim Black and Nico House and some other guy who I'm not familiar with, and making really bizarre allegations. So we're going to have Nico on, and I'm going to have Jared, the attorney that's suing the DNC. We're going to put together that show this week, I promise you. Okay, I'm going to get that going for you. So let's see what's next. Back in the 80s. Well, I got word this week of the death of Mario, I think the last name is pronounced Maglieri, who used to own the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Rainbow, okay, over on Sunset Strip in California. And what happened is back in the mid-'80s, I guess it was around, I remember I had already broken my hand, and I had the nightclub in Manhattan. So it was about 1985. And me and my friend, Freddie, were out, in Manhattan, out and about, having a nice, delicious dinner. I had a lot of money back in those days. And at the table next to us were these organized crime figures that Freddie knew. He was friends with them. And they were celebrating because they had just cut a deal, I believe it was with Steven Spielberg, to get the video rights for the movie E.T. If it wasn't E.T., if my memory is not correct, it was a long time ago, 1985. If it wasn't E.T., then it was another movie of that status. It was a big deal. I was impressed to meet these guys. And I had just broken my hand, and the cast was just off, so I didn't like to shake hands with anybody with my right hand because they shook too hard, and these were big, beefy guys. I didn't want my hand to get broken again because, when you break your hand and you go shaking, you see a big guy and you shake his hand, sometimes they give you that grip, that's trouble. So I went to shake my hand with my left hand, and all these guys went reaching for their guns. Thinking I was going to grab his hand and then pull out my gun with my right hand. So that was a little awkward. But after that was cleared up, we cleared that situation. And the guy who had made this deal, the guy, the big shot there, the one in charge, he's talking to us. They're sending champagne over to our table, Oh, I tell you, man, Manhattan's cool in a lot of ways. Okay, and I lived it. But we're talking back and forth from our table to that table. So we're close enough by that we can just kind of talk over our shoulders to each other. One table's talking to the other table. And he goes, from now on, whenever I go to California, I only stay at the B Lodge. It's the most beautiful hotel in all of California. It's the only place I would say, the B Lodge. I love that place, the B Lodge. So shortly after that, it wasn't just even a couple of months, I had taken a trip out to California. And it was kind of funny, too, because first I stayed at the Valley Sheraton. I stayed at this really crappy hotel. I didn't know where to stay, because the first time I'd been to California, so I was like 12 years old. I was there by myself. And I had some business out there to take care of. And so I noticed, coming from New York, I used to wear a suit and tie every day, or a jacket, sport jacket and tie every day. So I noticed I stuck out like a sore thumb over there in California. I didn't fit in with the California wardrobe. So I said, okay, let me go over to this Valley Sheraton Mall over here, the Valley Mall, and I'll, get dressed like a California person. So I go into one of the shops here, and I said to the guy, hey, man, you got to dress me up here. I want to look like a California guy. So, okay, we're going to take care of you. We're going to dress you up. So my girlfriend from New York had fixed me up with a couple of friends of hers to take me out. I guess to keep an eye on me. And so I went and I picked them up. And I said, oh, how do I, I went and put this outfit today. How do I look? And they go, well, to be honest, you look like an Iranian. You look like an Iranian. And I says, you know what? The guy, the salesman, was Iranian. I think of it, so they dressed him like an Iranian guy. So anyway, I threw those clothes away. And I had some problems at the hotel. It was just totally insufficient for my needs. Okay? At one point, I called down to the room service, and I said, okay, send up a 6-pack of beer. Right? So the guy comes up with and I says, and bring a bottle opener, because there was a bottle opener on the bathroom, Sometimes the hotels got a little bottle opener, screwed to the wall. And I said, the bottle opener's broke off the bathroom, so bring up a bottle opener. So they send the guy up with the beers and the bottle opener. And he goes, do you want me to open a couple of these beers? And I says, no, just leave the bottle opener. He says, I can't. It's the only one we have down in the bar. whole hotel has one bottle opener, okay? And they don't want to leave it with me, so now I'm more pissed off, you know? And then it even got worse. When I was trying to check out, I was checking out early, and I says, well, you know, you reserved this many rooms. We're going to charge you for the rest of the days. And I said, no, you're not. You're not going to charge me any days. And we got into this whole big beef. And ultimately, they charged me for the days, the extra days. I wasn't even staying in this hotel because I had sent my suit down to the cleaners. And because my suit was staying at the hotel in their cleaners until the next day, they charged me for another day in the room. But I said, okay, get me out of here. And I want to go to a place I heard of called the B Lodge. I want to go to the B Lodge because I know these wise guys in New York, and they say it's the best hotel in California. And that's where I'm going. On Sunset Strip. And my friend who's taking me over there says, do you mean La Bellage? The La Bellage Hotel? Okay. We'll take it to the Bellage. You know, this mafia guy's calling it the B Lodge. I thought it was a lodge. You know, like a hunting lodge kind of place. But it was a French place called La Bellage. So I check in there, and it's right across the street. It's on the Sunset Strip. Coolest place in the world. There's a pool on the roof. I told stories about that too, you know, about my adventures at the B Lodge. There's a Warren Beatty hanging out by the pool. And when I had to... I know I told the story once before on the air, but I had to get up in the middle of the night and go use the payphone, which was on the roof by the pool. So I put on my bathrobe and I grab a cigar and I go down to the payphone. And as I step off the elevator, I notice there's a wedding going on. Okay. And I'm walking out into this wedding in my bathrobe with smoking a cigar and a pocket full of quarters. And of course, some guy stops me and he goes, "Oh, excuse me, sir, we have an event going on." That's okay. I just need to use the phone. I'm a guest here. Oh God. Anyway. So right across the street, I'm living it up to this La Bellage. It's a wonderful hotel. And I'm living it up. And it was a fortune, but still I had a good time. It was worth it. I get to tell you about it. Right across the street was the Whiskey Go-Go and the Rainbow. And I had given up trying to look like a California person, so I put on my sport jacket, my tie, and I go on. I'm going to go hang out at these clubs. I heard about these clubs. The Doors, you know, with the Whiskey Go-Go, right? And this is at the time in the 80s when all these heavy metal bands, and I believe the night I was there, Guns N' Roses was playing at the Whiskey. So I had just opened up this nightclub in Manhattan, and I had my business cards from the nightclub. And I knew that when I had my club, that other club owners would come, and they'd just walk to the front of the line and say, "Hey, you know, I own a China Club, you know, I want to come in," right? So that's what I did. I went to the front of the line to I usually go to the front of the line anyway, but I'm trying to talk my way in. But as all these heavy metal kids in their leather jackets and their long spandex pants and their long hair with the hair bands and stuff like that, you know, and their jewelry, and all their girlfriends are dressed like strippers, right? And here comes this guy, looking like a New York, whatever, and my sport jacket and tie, you know, my shoes. And so, you know, I kind of, people were saying, "Well, who's this guy, record producer? You know, what's this guy? You know, he's coming to shake us down? What's going on here?" So I go up to the staff guy, the doorman, and I hand him my card, and I say, "Hey, how are you? You know, just checking the place out. I'm from New York, you know, I own this club in New York here. I want to check the place out." He says, "Well, we'll go talk to that gentleman over there down at the end of this alley," right? So I was up walking down the alley, and it turns out it's this guy, Mario, you know, older guy. He's older than me. He's a cool guy, you know, Italian-looking guy. You know, right away, you know, he had respect for me, and he brought me in through the side door in the back there at the Whiskey, which was right where the stage. So I was like backstage on the side of the stage watching the band, you know, and then later on he took me over to the Rainbow, and he bought me a drink. And the Rainbow, you got to know, is pretty famous too because it's the last place that John Belushi ate there. It was his last meal before he died. All kind of stuff like that, you know, royal, you know, Jim Morris and all these kind of people there. And this guy Mario was very, very kind to me. And he gave me his card. He wrote something on the back. I forget what it was. It was some kind of code word, like Ajax or Comet or something like that. I wish I could find it. I have a big vase filled with all kinds of matchbooks from all the places I've traveled all over the world, and business cards in there and stuff like that. And I've seen this card many times, and it says It's a rainbow matchbook and a business card from this guy Mario Maglieri, I think it's pronounced. And anyway, he passed this week. A living legend, a rock legend. He's a guy who knew everybody in the rock business, Guns N' Roses, all those, I can't think of it, but all those heavy metal guys and the Doors and all that kind of stuff. I even went later on, too. I was back in California again, and I made a call to the thing, and I got backstage passes to get into see David Bowie at the Whiskey. But at the night it was playing, I had to leave early, and I didn't get a chance to see it. So anyway, I raised a toast to Mario Maglieri there over at the Rainbow, and the what's that place called? The Whiskey A Go-Go. No, I didn't make him carry my shoes. Okay, let's see. Back to my notes. Well, what are you going to say? We got everybody, you could turn on the news, and it's 24 hours about this stuff with Trump and Comey. And, at this point, what can I really add? All this chaos going on. I remember when I was a kid growing up and watching the Watergate hearings on TV in 1973. I was a little kid, I was like fourth or fifth grade. And no, actually third or fourth grade. And I remember sitting there in our apartment house in the Bronx, and my mother would be ironing all the time. She was always ironing. There was nothing else on TV. There was only 3 channels. All the soap operas were off, and the game shows were off. And they would run in these Watergate hearings. And the thing was, you knew something really serious and really important was going on, because the office of the presidency was, there was some kind of shenanigans going on. That the Constitution was being threatened. And here we are now in a situation where we got this game show host for president. He has no clue what he's doing, making threats against the FBI director, and I've come to the end of my rope. There's really nothing left for me to say, because the people who support Trump still at this point, and I even went on Facebook the other day and I said, does anybody still support this guy after all this? Oh, yeah, he's draining the swamp. That's what he's doing, Ed. By getting rid of Comey, he's draining the swamp. And it's the same day, and he's taking down the New World Order. The same day he's got Henry Kissinger sitting there in the Oval Office. And these people are going to tell me he's draining the swamp. It's like talking to someone who's goes to a fortune teller down there, in Little Italy, one of those real shakedown artists, fortune teller people. They scam people out of their life's fortunes, their life savings, and trying to convince them that, no, you're being taken advantage of. This woman who's telling your fortune and you're bringing her all this money. She's lying to you. She's stealing from them. They don't want to believe it because it's like a faith healer, almost. One of these con men. They want to believe it with all their heart. So there's really nothing I can add to this discussion, about what's going on with this chaotic situation in Washington, which is really terrifying on so many different levels. But there's a really good discussion. I had Len Kolodny on the show recently, who wrote the book Silent Coup, all that stuff about Watergate, and he's having a discussion with David Talbot, the Pulitzer Prize winning guy, and Peter Dale Scott, who we also had on the show, and they're having a great discussion on Facebook. If you're not friends with all 3 of them, or even one of them, get quickly on their friends list. They're all up there on 5,000. But if you can join in this discussion, just watch them having this discussion. It's just brilliant, what is going on in our life here. I've in my life I've known a lot of FBI. When I was working out of the office there in Brooklyn, you'd have contact with either former FBI organized crime task force or current. Sometimes it would come in, into the office, and you'd have to turn over documents and stuff like that to them. Because the old organized crime cases I worked on. And then Ted Gunderson, I had met Gunderson, former director of the FBI, special agent in charge of Los Angeles County. PI conventions, you meet ex-FBIs. A lot of PIs are ex-FBI agents. You meet a lot of these guys. And I've had some on the show, Dr. Fred Whitehurst, the FBI agent in charge of all the forensics department for the whole entire FBI. was down there at Waco. He was down there at the D.C. World Trade Center bombing, the first one in '93. As part of O.J. trial, all this stuff, man. And we had Richard Lambert, the FBI investigator in charge of the anthrax investigation. He was updating Dick Cheney every day at the White House. And both of these guys, by the way, had sued the FBI. And there's one thing I could tell you about all these guys. We had that guy, Hammer, who did the child pornography bust in New York. One thing I could tell you about these guys is that they're all patriots, man. These guys are people who they believe in country. They believe in democracy. They believe in the president. They have respect for the office of the presidency. No one can have respect for this clown here. Even the Clintons had respect for the FBI when, that whole thing went on with Leonard Peltier. And the FBI agents protested, and they told him, listen, we're going to investigate the hell out of you. We're going to, if you don't keep Peltier in prison. So I cannot see how Trump can survive this now by attacking this Comey in the way he has, and that he's not going to be a target of the FBI agents, the whole thing systemically, from top to bottom. He tells Comey that, hey, be careful, I might have a tape recorder. I might have a recording of our conversation. You're threatening the FBI with a wiretap. It's so bizarre. This guy is suicidal on so many levels, because now once you admit there's some kind of a tape, now they can subpoena that. Any kind of congressional investigation, any kind of congressional hearing can now subpoena that within seconds. And I have experience with this because when I was working on a congressional investigation and I needed some information and I called them up complaining about it, I thought it was going to take weeks to get a subpoena. They had it in 24 hours. These guys don't fool around because on their staff, they got lawyers working on their staff. It's not just you working for a law office. These guys got lawyers coming out of their wazoo. They got staffers that are very qualified lawyers. A lot of people, too, are asking me, too, was it legal for him to tape? Yes, it is legal. Federal law is one party has to have knowledge of the taping. If I have a conversation over the phone with somebody in New York, it's legal for me to tape them as long as one party is aware of the tape recording going on. Okay? Now, in a state, like if I'm calling California, if I call someone in California, even though federal law says that it's one-party consent, since California is a two-party state, then, and I'm here in Nevada, which is also a one-party state, and I call California, I'm at the harmed party. If I don't warn the person I'm recording in California, they're the harmed party, then they can go to their state and get me on, they can make a complaint to their state that I'm recording them without their permission. So, and all that's in my book too. You can get my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, and I have every state wire recording laws, because some states are one party, some states are two party, and it's all in there. And that's one of the reasons why I updated the book recently too, is because those laws change and stuff like that. So people wondering if it was legal for Trump to tape. Yes, it is legal. Okay. Let's take a commercial break. Let's see here. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com. On our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick. And there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles and Jack Parsons. Everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report .com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night, and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air. You get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by a the range covers 5 million people in population, where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Now, one of the things that disturbs me so much about this week, and it's probably something I can share with you that you don't know, something I can give you some first-hand information on. Because this stuff, if you want to know about Trump and Comey and the certified letter, and all, it's on 24 hours, 24/7. It's been going on, ad nauseum. You can't miss it. Trump admitting that he's going out to dinner with Comey and asking him 3 times. My God. But one thing that I find the most unnerving about this, from my perspective, that I'd like to share with you is Keith Schiller. In all this, we find out that the one who President Mr. Trump chose to deliver this firing letter to James Comey was his longtime bodyguard, NYPD officer Keith Schiller, and he gave him this manila envelope, and he went down to FBI headquarters to deliver this you're fired letter to Comey. And Comey wasn't there. He was in California giving a speech. None of this was all off the cuff. None of this was planned. It was all chaotic. He has no one in the wings waiting to take over for Comey. Fired 48 prosecutors. There's no one to take over for that. That's a mess. Our embassies all over the world have no diplomats in them. This is chaos, guys. But he chooses this guy, Keith Schiller, to deliver this envelope. Now, the whole connection came to me when I saw Keith Schiller punch out a Mexican protester out in front of Trump Tower way in the beginning of this campaign. And I said, is that the Keith Schiller I know? He's working for Trump now? Okay. Because my connection with Keith Schiller was, first I did a little job for him. Because, with Keith Schiller, by the way, what he used to do was, he worked in New York City for the Fisher House. Okay. And Fisher House is this big billionaire real estate guy named Fisher. I don't know his first name. And he owns the Intrepid Museum. And they bought one of the shuttles, and my partner was part of NYPD Scuba, and they moved the shuttle up and down the Hudson. They towed her up there, for this Fisher Foundation. And Fisher Foundation, he has this fetish with cops where he likes to hire cops, uniformed cops, and have them go to his friend's funeral. So he'll hire 600 cops to show up down there at a funeral. And this hiring process was going through Keith Schiller. He handled this. But on one occasion, when Keith had a problem he needed solved, he came to me to fix the problem for him. Okay? And then he stiffed me. He didn't pay me. Okay? Which is a whole other issue. Wasn't that much money. I was told, we have to forgive Godfather Keith because, he does favors for people in the NYPD. But another issue we had, too, was that when I was starting up my business and we were doing employment screening, and I set up my company in Colorado, we had cops from New York working for us. We had a staff in Colorado. People we wanted to hire from New York, who were cops in New York, were afraid to come work for me because Keith felt threatened by my little tiny 6-man company. Okay, I think we had like 5 people in Colorado. We had like 3 people in New York, And he was threatened by this. So to think now that this guy now, just a few short years later, this was like in 2000, 2003, 2005 we're talking about. This is 12 years ago. That someone who's walking around the White House and actually has the title of White House Operations Manager. And that Trump actually sent this guy to Iraq to sit at the negotiating table with the Iraqi diplomats in Iraq. And now he's sending this guy over to deliver this letter over to Comey. And Comey's not even there. I like to think that when I go to bed at night and I put my little head on my pillow, that there's people in Washington, in the White House, that have a little more capability than I have, that these are capable people. I don't even think Keith Schiller has a college diploma. I don't think this guy went to college. And he's running around the White House? There's plenty of, I can come up with, off the top of my head, 100 people that I know that are more competent to fill that role than this character, Keith Schiller. Okay, and by the way, too, when I get into things like this, specifically like this, okay, where I'm talking about someone I know and we have mutual friends that I'm still kind of friends with, and we have mutual enemies that I'm still kind of enemies with, this is the kind of thing where I really stick my neck out for you because someone's going to knock on my day one door, okay, I'm going to open up the door, they're going to punch me in the face, knock me out, and totally get away with it because they're an off-duty cop. Okay, but still I think it's important that you know this. I think it's important that you know, and there are things I would go to Keith for. If I needed some guys to help me out with some problems, I would go to him for that. Okay? To deliver a firing letter to the head of the FBI, I wouldn't dream of it. I got William Ramsey for that. Or to be White House operations manager, or to send him to Iraq to negotiate with the government of Iraq. This is insanity. It's not even in the ballpark. So that's something that's personally very unnerving to me, my friends. We had here on the show, we had Gary Byrne, who was a Secret Service agent, and his job in the White House was to sit out in front of the door of the Oval Office when Bill Clinton was president. Okay? I would give that job to Keith Schiller. Keith Schiller could handle that kind of job. And I'm even though, to raise to that level in the Secret Service, it's a big deal. I would trust him to do that. He should be doing something like that, sitting out in front of the door, not off in Iraq negotiating with the Iraqis, or firing Comey, or punching out people in front of the Trump Towers. Hey. The two things I get the most emails about doing this show is, one is people always ask, hey, Ed, how's your daughter doing? How's Vic? And the other thing is when I'm doing the Daniel fast, they say, hey, Ed, how's the Daniel fast going along? And I really encourage people to join me in the Daniel fast. You can look it up if you just Google Daniel fast. It's a fast from the Bible, and where you no alcohol, 21 days, no coffee, no sugar, 21 days, no meat, no fish, no rice, no white rice anyway, and fruit, vegetables, nuts, berries, that kind of stuff, water. And today, as a matter of fact, is a little over 21 days. I'm going to do it like another 30 days. I lost about 25 pounds. I lost about. And I feel really good. Yesterday, we went, me and my daughter, Victoria, went to the San Gennaro Feast over here in Las Vegas. I really recommend it. It's much smaller than it's been in the past, but it's up on Craig Road, and it's by this incredible park. We got there way too early, so there's this park right next to it where you could park for free. And there's 3 ponds over there with these turtles and ducks and all this stuff like that. And we walked around this big, giant park. It's bigger than Sunset Park, if you're a local here. So we went to the San Gennaro Feast, and I did cheat a little bit, or slip a little bit, I guess you might say. I had some lemonade with sugar in it, and it went right to my freaking head. I had like a jolt of sugar in me like you wouldn't believe it. And I had some pasta, some manicotti with the ricotta sauce in it, cheese in it. So I had a little bit of cheese, I had a little bit of sugar. But other than that, I'm going to do another about 30 days probably on this. Okay. And Vic is doing great. She was just elected the captain of the debate team, and she was accepted to this class. It's a very, very exclusive class that they're doing here in Nevada. There's less than 100 kids that are going to be doing this, where in junior year and senior year of high school, she's going to be taking this thing called Capstone. And if she has to pass a total of 4 AP classes, which she's already passed like 4 already, and then pass this capstone thing in the 2 years, and then she'll go into college as a sophomore. She'll have enough credits to go in as a sophomore. So this is a big deal for us. Very exclusive. And she's all excited, too, because she won this debate captain thing, which she's doing very, very well in. So, but the one thing, though, and it was a real emotional thing for us going back to the feast, because we haven't been able to go in the past couple of years. We've missed it. We missed the Clark County Fair. And this is something we used to do all the time when she was really, really little. And but this time with the feast, with the Daniel fast, I had some new experiences that I've never had before. And by the way, if you want to get involved, you can do the fast 21 days. Look it up online. Take some before and after pictures. Take some pictures of your recipes. Write down your recipes and just jot down your experience, just a few paragraphs. And we're going to compile that all together in a book. It's going to be like a cookbook with recipes and people's experiences and the benefits that they felt from the Daniel fast. You can sell copies of the book. You make money on the book. Plus, you'll be in a book. Get your picture in a book. Get your writing in a book. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. But this time with the Daniel fast, first of all, I had this fever. I had a fever for like 4 days. I had caught this fever. I don't know what it was. I had never gotten sick with the Daniel fast before, but this time I did. And I had a fever and a headache for days. And also, too, these incredible emotions came up out of me like never before. And one of the things there was a scene I watched this movie this week called Grand Canyon, and it's a movie from 1991, and Danny Glover's in it, and it's about racial, and economic differences in California back in the 90s, the early 90s, 1991. And I remember seeing it in the movies when I was a kid. And I wasn't a kid, but in the 90s I saw it in the movies. And I saw it again this week, and there's a scene where the little boy is growing up. He's 15 years old. He's taking driving lessons. He's with his first girlfriend. And the mother has a flashback to when she was putting him in the car seat and saying to him, okay, buddy, we're going to explore this city together. You and me, we're going to learn. And it reminded me so much of when Victoria was a child. Because when you have your kid, and you're taking care of your kid, 24 hours a day, the parent that's raising them, so they're like your best friend, They're in the car with you all the time, running errands, when you're talking, you're making jokes, you're stupid cartoons and singing songs and playing games, taking them to the park. But you're together all day long, man, And now here's my little girl. She's growing up. She's went to the prom, She's got this boyfriend. She's a debate captain. She's learning how to drive. All these things. I can't complain. Greatest kid in the whole world. She's turned out so good. But I've just had all these emotional things come out with me when she was, from thinking back to when she was a little kid, And like all little kids, all parents do the thing with, Santa Claus, where you lie to your kid and you pretend there's a Santa Claus, and you take the milk and the cookies and you put out the milk and cookies the night before, and then the next day you take a bite out of one of the cookies, you drink some of the milk or you pour it out, But I would do these whole elaborate things that I would do with her and all the kids in the neighborhood too. And I'd get some celery and carrots, for the reindeer, and then I'd bite them in half, and some of them would be on the front lawn. The next day we'd find them a couple of days later. Oh, look, it's the, oh my God, look, it's the reindeer, One of the things I used to do was, because we used to go to Chuck E. Cheese all the time, right? So I used to tell her, well, listen, they're going to know that we have this system here to get all these tickets. So when we go to cash in the tickets, talk in a foreign accent so they won't know it's us. Okay. And she said, okay, Dad, okay, it's a great idea. So we would talk in a foreign accent when we were checking in our tickets. Another thing that I did was this really elaborate thing, and I didn't get a chance to do it because I got kicked out of my house right around the time when I was working on this. She had gone on a trip to New York with her mom, and I came up with this plan. I printed out this treasure map on the printer, and I soaked it in coffee, and I baked it in the what was that thing, the barbecue thing, and I left it out in the sun, and I poured tea on it and stuff like that, and dirt, I burnt the edges to make it look like it was an old map, And I took dust from the vacuum cleaner. I put it on there. And my plan was to take this map and say, look, I found this treasure map, to her and all her friends. I says, let's go dig up the treasure. And I remember too, the map even, because it was a kid's coloring map, and it even had a cartoon figure that said treasure map on it. But I was able to convince them though. But the plan was I was going to go down to Nelson's Landing. I even bought one of those big bones you can get at a cow leg or something like that, or a pig's bone, whatever that stuff is, that you get at the dog pet store, I bought one of those, and I bought some little coins and a little treasure box. I was going to bury all this stuff down there, and then we were going to go down and find it and dig it up, dig up this buried treasure. Well, we never got a chance to do that. I was always disappointed about that. But one thing I did do with her was we found this rock one time when we were out hiking, and I told her it was kryptonite. Okay, I says, that's kryptonite. Victoria, don't come near me with that kryptonite because it's going to weaken me. So I wasn't even 5 years old when I was doing this. I remember she was little. And when she would come close to me with the kryptonite, I would make believe I was melting in my chair. And I'd go, kryptonite, kryptonite, kryptonite. And then so she knew when she came near me with this little rock, I would fall apart like I was being attacked by kryptonite. So then sometimes she would come into my office with the rock behind her back, but I could see she had something behind her back. I knew it was the kryptonite. I knew what this kid's up to. And one time she brought her friend Haley and says, look what I can do to my dad. Watch me go into this room. It's going to make him get all weak for the kryptonite. So she would come into my office, too, with the kryptonite and jump up on my lap, and I would do the whole thing, melting the chair. Kryptonite, kryptonite. And one time I was doing this, and she was laughing so hard that she peed her pants. And it's just one of the funniest things that we always remember. This hysterical kryptonite event. So one of the reasons, by the way, tonight why I had to play that Alan Warren show, and it was going to go into the members section. I was supposed to be doing a show with the people from. I had them on a couple of weeks back about the Madeleine McCann story. And it's very interesting what happened with this. Because, first of all, I thought the show was going to be about West Memphis 3. William Ramsey had booked the show for me. And I thought it was going to be at the West Memphis 3. But at the last minute, I found out, well, no, it's about the Madeleine McCann story. So I said, okay, well, that's an interesting story. And I knew a little bit about it. I had the little girl went missing, whatever. The parents, I think it was Portugal, right? I knew enough to get into this interview. And, the day of the interview, I could tell that the guests were a little nervous because they were bugging Ramsey. So I said, let me call this guy off the air and calm him down a bit. He would do a sound check with him, just kind of smooth things over with him, which I hardly ever do. Because most of the people, you just book them, you get them on the show. It's just like when I show up at a jail or something like that to interview a witness, you don't have to do a pre-interview with them. You just get down there and find out what the facts are. Ask them the questions. So it turns out it's going to be about McCann and not the West Memphis 3. So if you go to the YouTube channel and you look up the Madeleine McCann show, you'll see that there's a lot of controversy in the comments. Okay, because what happened is during the middle of the show, or then it was toward the beginning of the show, as a matter of fact, I asked them, the two guests, if they had heard of the Podesta police sketches. Because when Pizzagate came out, people said, hey, look at these sketches from the Madeleine McCann case. They look just like the Podesta brothers. Right? When you look at them, they do look like the Podesta brothers. Now, I was not sure if these were actual sketches or not. I thought maybe someone made up these sketches for Pizzagate. I had no idea. So toward the beginning of the interview, I says, hey, what about those sketches? What do you know about that? And they both says, oh, what are you talking about? We don't know anything about these sketches. And I said, oh, they don't know anything about the sketches. So I figured, well, okay, all right. Well, maybe within the Madeleine McCann community, maybe these sketches aren't a big deal. But in the comments, in the chat room and on YouTube and stuff like that, everybody, and I've checked into Madeleine McCann community since then, everybody knows about these sketches. So I said, what's going on? Okay. So we do the interview, and a lot of people complain too, because one of the guests was a little long-winded, and we didn't cover that much information. We only got to the night of the crime. We didn't get to any of the investigation afterwards. So I said, okay, fine, I'll have him come back, and we'll tape a show with him during the week, calm him down, I'll help him out, try and get things right here. So, but then we started to have some odd occurrences. Right after the show, they went to the Spreaker channel, and they started posting these links to Snopes and to a New York Times article about the Podesta sketches. And then I saw, like a day after that, on Twitter, again, he posts about these Podesta sketches. And then on YouTube, he posts about these Podesta sketches. So I started thinking, well, this is interesting. The guy said he didn't know anything about the Podesta sketches. Now he's posting them all over the place. Then he contacts me on Spreaker and posts to me these Podesta sketches. Okay? So I said to him, I said, so you were aware of this when I asked you the question? And no reply. Now, when you're a private investigator or a radio host, but mostly as a private investigator, you get comfortable asking difficult questions. When someone's lying to you, you kind of got to call them on it. And I've talked about this in the past, too, that I've known people that were professional con men. And if you let them get away with that lie, then they think they got a sucker in their hands. They're going to take advantage of you. So you got to call them on that first lie. And also, too, I told a story once about I had this client who was being charged with online harassment and stalking and stuff like that. And she told me, and her lawyer actually allowed her to give this alibi to the police when the police came to question her. He let her be questioned by the police. And she came up with this cockamamie story that her Wi-Fi was hacked into and someone was parked out in front of her house, logged into her Wi-Fi, and that's why she was caught. But I knew how, because I got the discovery, I saw how the investigator tracked it back to her computer. It was a method that I have actually invented myself, so I know how they did it. And I knew that they had more information about her computer than just her IP address, so I knew her excuse, alibi, was not going to fly. And you got to be bold, and you got to tell them, hey, listen, you're not telling me the truth. This isn't going to work. So I confronted him on Skype, and I says, well, you knew about this before when I answered the question? And he comes back like a day later with these 10 paragraphs back, making these comments about, well, is your show about conspiracies? Right? And I thought, and I said, well, is this guy trying to insult me? Is he trying to offend me? Is he being rude with me? And I found out later on, yes, he was, because he said all the same stuff to William Ramsey in a private conversation with Ramsey about how I'm some kind of conspiracy, and he's above all this. Okay, his credentials, the guy's a marathon runner. Okay, I just got 30 years as an investigator. All right, I could dare compare myself to someone who's all this qualifications. So I said to him, well, does my show deal with conspiracies? Well, yes, it does. As a matter of fact, my clients in the Pizza Connection case and the Mafia Commission case were charged with conspiracy. So yes, I do deal with conspiracies. My clients were charged with conspiracies. And I've said this many times because people have this thing like conspiracies. And I brought this up before. I said, no, my clients were charged with conspiracies by Rudy Giuliani. Okay, if you're telling me the conspiracies don't exist, I'll bring you down to the courtroom right now. We'll get him out of prison. Okay, we got to drop the charges because we got here this marathon runner says conspiracies don't exist. Well, it gets better than this. The guy thinks I'm talking about, when I said the Pizza Connection, he thinks I'm talking about Pizzagate. And now he's convinced that I work for Podesta, that Podesta was my client. Okay? And the reason why I brought up these Podesta emails is because I want to publicize and promote my client, my work I've done for Podesta. Okay? And that when he wouldn't respond to my question about these sketches, that for the rest of the interview I was seething here because we weren't talking about John Podesta and his sketches. This is what he says now. Anyway, it winds up, the guy goes on YouTube and he's cursing me out. He's cursing out the listeners. Anybody, you're an effing idiot if you think these sketches are real. Well, here's the thing. Why is this important? Okay, first of all, I'll tell you why it's important. Madeleine McCann, I had Pat Brown on the show, who wrote a book about the Madeleine McCann story as well. And her got wiped off of Amazon the first week. And it's very easy to get a self-published book taken down off of Amazon. You can do it in 5 minutes, okay? You're going to know the magic words, and I know what they are. But this book is not. For some reason, the McCanns, even though the McCanns are being targeted in this book, the McCanns aren't taking this book down. The book's being left up. They take down Pat Brown, they leave this book up. You tell me. Now, we had another instance on this show where I had a guest come on the show about a very controversial topic. And before the author came on the show, I got a phone call from the author's publisher. And I said, well, what do I need a call from this publisher for? We've already got the show booked. We got the times, we got the dates, everything's all straightened out. Let me call the publisher and see what's going on. The publisher tells me, hello, Mr. Radio Host. I'm a former Mossad agent. I used to work for the Mossad. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book about using deception. And you should interview me one day. But for now, interview this author here. And, they're going to talk to you about this controversial topic. Okay, well, the Mossad's calling me up. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. I interview this author, and I find out the author's kind of leaving things out here and there. And then I find out that we look into this author and we find out that the author's attorney is the same attorney as the person in the book that she's accusing, but leaving things out. You follow me what I'm saying here? The book was published as a whitewash, as a cover story for the guy who was guilty. And they put this author up to do it. And they financed it, and the Mossad was involved in publishing it. So I got to be on my toes, okay? And when I see something suspicious, something a little hanky, okay, goes on behind the scenes, I'm going to tell you about it, all right? Now, this could have went down a whole different way. If I'm taking an affidavit from somebody, I'm taking a witness statement from a witness, and there's something in there that's wrong and correct, okay, I give them a chance to correct it. Okay, and I gave these folks here a chance to come back on the show and correct it. I was going to make a big deal out of it. I wasn't going to say, hey, why'd you lie to me? I said, well, you know, I asked you about the Podestas, and now it turns out you know about the Podestas. So either, by the way, too, he admitted he lied on YouTube. You can go on the YouTube channel and see it. But the thing is, at one point, it was like, hey, either you didn't know about the Podestas, or right after the show, you did all this research on the Podestas, and now you're an expert on it. Okay? Now you're the sole authority on the Podesta case. So anyway, just wanted to run that by you here in full disclosure, the interest of full disclosure of what goes on here behind the scenes. If someone comes on the air and lies to you, I want you to know it. And let's see what else. Well, that pretty much case is closed. We got coming up after this is Abby Martin. Tomorrow I got 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have the guy who was a cold case investigator who wrote the book about how Edward Wayne Edwards is like behind the OJ killing. He's a Zodiac killer. He killed Nicole, and he killed the West Memphis 3, and he killed all these people. So I think he even killed the Manson killings. I think he thinks. So we're going to have this guy on tomorrow, and we're going to get to the bottom of that story. Okay. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Don't forget the members section, okay? I sent out an email real quick this week, okay? I sent out an email, a mass email to everyone who's ever been a member. So keep an eye out for that. Saying that if you want to get 13 months, I'll give you 13 months for $65, okay? Just reply to that email. I'll send you a PayPal request, and then you can sign up. You get 13 months for $65. If you don't want to do that, don't feel like you don't feel the need that you have to email me and apologize or whatever. Okay, I appreciate that, but, you know, I'm getting a lot of emails, okay? And you know how much I love those emails. All right, guys, listen, I love you very much. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We're going to have next coming up is, what's his name? Pierce Redmond? Yeah, all right. You guys got it. You guys got it. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.